And our conversation today will start off with a look at the state of the nation with one who's been there and seen it all. If you listen carefully, you would have heard him do a short laugh there. But he's let me read you his biography. His biography. He's a founding National Secretary of the Alliance for Democracy and a distinguished fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us to welcome Professor Udenta. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you. What an age.
You did. It's been an age.
So I'm happy we are back again.
Some of us that went to the University of Nigeria would continue hearing the name Professor Udenta.
Thank you so much about that.
It's good to meet you again. So,
it's a pleasure.
I think in the course of this month or thereabouts, you had a press statement put out.
Yes.
And you were asking the president to do something different. Just walk us through that. What's that thinking, as in do something different?
Yes, I did put that statement, and I'm happy you have amplified the kernel of my thought, do something different. But before I even get into that, the meat of that piece and the shows I've done around it, let me preface this conversation, my entry, with a piece, another piece, written by another professor, Professor P.C. Jadive, in a paper called The News Chronicle. The title is intriguing. The storm clouds are gathering towards a totalitarian state. It's like a question. This is at the heart of our democratic project today. It's still a very delicate project we're managing from 1999. After long years, decades of military, hunter hegemony. So that question he posed is important. And I'd ask people who are listening to us or watching to go take a peep into that. The storm clouds are gathering towards a totalitarian state. And it gets right into the meat of this conversation, because it asks that painful question. Are we witnessing the decay or the composition of democratic ethos in Nigeria? Is the government becoming increasingly irritable because of contrarian views, because people want to express themselves in a robust manner? The way the same APC did 2013, 2014, that saw them through power in 2015. Today, while waiting for this, I was listening to the earlier conversation. The NLC president is a very important position and a very important platform. Terrorism financing. As you said, we don't know what it is. That's the first one. Second one, 1,400 and hunger protesters still in jail. Amnesty International increasingly find that the civic space is shrinking. Empowered voices are being constrained. That's why I'm sure that piece was written by him, and that is part of this matter I raised in my piece. The essence of that piece is simply to take a fresh look at the Nigerian condition and say, for a year plus, you've been doing something in a particular direction, it doesn't seem to be working. Each time there's a blame game in Nigeria, Buhari blamed Jonathan. Now, after 8 years, we knew Jonathan was like a shining star to Buhari's own ruined presidency. Now, the same APC to APC transition, this one started by blaming Buhari. Shockingly, 1 year plus, the record seems to really be all over the place. So why do you want to keep persisting in that approach when you can do something better in two key directions? I say, one, you cannot overwhelm the system by neoliberal policies and expect the system to pick up for the people to be happy. Reduce hunger, eliminate poverty, solve the problem of insecurity, get petroleum products available and sold at the rate people can buy them safely and cheaply. You can't do that by abandoning the political state. The political state is what saw you to the power as a president. That means you must engage and embrace that.
I mean, I want to be able to talk about something that you talked about recently, which is a cabinet some kind of change
Yes.
in his cabinet structure. But you just said something, I think me and Nelta wrote it down at the same time, where he said neoliberal policies.
That's exactly what he said.
What, explain that, just so people can understand.
Neoliberal policies.
What are these policies of the president? Yes. Which particular ones of this president would you say are neoliberal policies that you don't believe are working today?
There are two frames or frameworks in terms of managing an economy. There's that framework that says the state must intervene powerfully and potently on behalf of the people, on behalf of the infrastructure of economic management. That means education, healthcare, services, housing, and so on, social works. The state must be hands-on and put in resources. So if you empower the people by empowering what we call human infrastructure, these areas, education, health, and housing, you empower human security. Society will know periods of development and growth. Because you're putting the state at the epicenter of economic management. The neoliberal policy is the retreat of the state. Deregulation, commercialization, privatization. And when you do it in such a manner in which few individuals, the so-called 1%ers, have accumulated resources from the state over decades, they now use those resources to purchase the economy. Their own goal is profit. That is what sings good music in the ears of the West. The US, London, Washington, Berlin, Paris, where the president is right now. So the retreat of the state is neoliberal economics. That makes the state have very little to do with market economy. Allow the free market enterprise to drive it. We see how it is driving it across Africa for 30-something years. From the SAP of the 80s, Structural Adjustment Program, under Babangida. It actually convoluted the economy and eventually destroyed the middle class. Today you can see the poverty that is haunting the land because of these policies. So rather than the state retreating, the state must engage. The US and other powerful countries, the NATO countries, the EU countries, they invest heavily in key sectors that will keep the people happy. They provide subsidies to their farmers, to manufacturers. They do matters of tariff against China and other countries. This is the way the state will come in. But here, when they say the state should become to retreat so much, then the impact will become horrendous as we are witnessing today.
Let's take a look at some of the president's policies. I think we have some of them that we're putting up on our screens right now, just so we can get a feel
the
from
first one you can see on day one, without having it in his speech, subsidy is gone. And it is gone for good. What did you do in terms of the moment you took power the same day? I'm not sure you had the benefit of insight from a lot of advisors. You didn't even have many advisors. There was no cabinet. You might make campaign promises, but you don't govern on the basis of your campaign pledges. You govern from the center. Now you remove the subsidy. What did you put right there?
Okay.
The short term, mid term, long term.
Long term. But let's look at the other policies. Now, you say that subsidy is gone. Yes, that sounds like one of the neoliberal policies you talked about.
Not sounding like it is.
It is. Okay. So back off. But let's look at the other ones. Unified exchange rates. Again, another one.
That's again another one there.
Students' loans.
The student loan is part of that intervention, which is just coming on stream now.
So there's some good ones that have been.
That is part of that, which of course people can say, okay, recognition that that particular community, the student community, needs a lot of support. What the hell is going on there? Let us have this on ground there. How it is functioning and working, we don't even know much about it so far.
Okay, we'll get back to how that is functioning, because they tell us that they've distributed or given out some loans to thousands of Nigerian students across the country. But let's look at this. So we have the palliative measures at different levels.
It is disgusting to talk about palliatives. Okay. That's even a worst case scenario. That actually intensifies poverty. Okay. Listen, before you go forward, Buhari did palliatives for 8 years. People became poorer and poorer because they're handing them bread. Handing a little fish.
Instead of teaching them to fish.
You have to teach them how to fish by providing sustainable means of livelihood. So the moment you talk about palliative, you're talking about corruption. It's opaque because there's no transparency. The social register, who prepared it? The millions you're giving to, who knows them? And what do you give them? 2 loaves of bread, 2,000, 10,000, 5,000 and so on. You have 20 trucks to states for 3, 4, 5 million citizens of that state. 3 cups of rice put in a polythene bag. 2 onions on top of it. That's a palliative. You're actually impoverishing the people more and dehumanizing them. That one is something which you spend a lot of money, sometimes billions,
Okay, but
without any result.
Prof, if we look at the way things are, as you talked about the fact that this administration has blamed the previous administration for a dead economy.
Yes.
But see this, so in coming in, the government thought to put out security reforms, set up an economic advisory council, infrastructure development, health sector reforms, fiscal discipline and revenue generation, agricultural development.
Okay, fine. Every government across board,
yes, sir,
did same. If you go back to Buhari, 1 year row, his policies and programs, interventions, maybe better than this, maybe heavier in number. That's the peace, the kernel of my peace. If you don't get the politics right, you can get the economics right. The president has abandoned the political state. When Obasanjo came in 1999, he has reassembled the political state, even though he won election. Clearly, this one didn't win, with very limited mandate. As I said, 220 million Nigerians, 93 registered with INEC, 26% voted. He had only 36% of that 26% of 93 million. There's no mandate. So he must bring in people because they are alienated from the system and they have a deep purchase into the civic, cultural, and corporate world.
When you say again, before you continue, Prof, you said he has alienated the politicians.
No, not just politicians.
The people.
What you do as a political leader is to reassemble the political state. How do you do it? The moment you take office, you're the president. You're no longer president of APC or candidate of APC. The candidates of PDP, Labour Party, NNPP, we have to see you visibly courting them to come on board, not to join your government, to lend support. They're patriots like you. You must chase them the way you court people. Maybe a man courts a woman. Whether he's protesting, he said, no, politics is now over. Let us come to governance.
But in the face of Nigeria and since democracy returned, have you seen that kind of space?
I've seen that.
Except President Obasanjo. But beyond President...
No, I said Yar'Adua did. Even in the initial stage of Jonathan government, he did. What Yar'Adua actually did was to go beyond the political state. He went to civic state and said, let's have a special advisor on civic relations. If you have had a special advisor or reanimated that office, the boys and the girls in the street for the end hunger protest are civic spokespeople. If you have an office that answers to them, that clears their concerns, maybe you could have tempered that the agitation down.
The president does have special advisor and assistant in the different geopolitical zones that are supposed to handle this matter.
If you have special advisor that is part of your own political infrastructure, maybe part of APC brigade, you are not actually dealing with crisis of governance. When you talk about civic space, you're talking about people who have established themselves, and I gave their names. I won't repeat it on air. If you look at that piece, I gave about 10, 15 names of solid men and women who are not APC. They're not even appointed by the president, but their people respect them. They're influencers. These are people, if you have them, sit with them, say, you have a presidential council on civic relations, on civil society. You have a special office, you put somebody that is credible, not a party loyalist, not a guy to get a patronage somewhere in the state or the zone. But if you abandon the political state, like I said, if you don't deal with the political solution to crisis of governance, and then public policies the way you wanted to list them, they will not stick. That's why for a year, and they've not stuck. Because in as much as conflicts are primarily economic in nature, bread and butter issues, kitchen table issues, the politics behind those conflicts they must be attended to. And you're attending to the politics. Bring me back to where we started. What is the essence of public intellectuals like us and scholars? To intervene. Because we see danger signals. That's why I read the piece from my friend. The danger signal is that if you keep on battering about the economics of the matter, the policies out there, and you see the state is slipping out of control in terms of liberalism and authoritarianism, then the dangers for the survival of democracy becomes more acute.
Let's talk a little bit about this cabinet reshuffle that you're asking for.
Not strictly speaking, cabinet reshuffle. I said in 1999, with Obasanjo having won the election, he said we need to bring everybody together and said, Alliance for Democracy, which was our party then, and said, and APP, get involved with us in the task of rebuilding Nigeria, redefining the national ethos again after years of military dictatorship. That's why Uncle Bola Ige came on board willingly from us. That's why Dugba Daraja, the daughter of Abraham Blessing, the leader of Afenifera, the leader of AD. That's why Mahmoud Waziri, APP chairman, became the Special Advisor Inter-Party. Mohamed Shatta from same APP, Minister of Interior. They maintained their party loyalty and cohesion. The contestation for ideas and policies were going on, but people were saying the politicians seem to have come together. Elite consensus seems to have been built. Without built, you have a national consensus. But now when you're chasing labor, the president of NLC has been to treasonable set of felony charges, terrorist financing. You're actually trying to do what? Destroy a powerful, potent voice that helps to keep the society on its toes. Building guardrails for democracy is key. That's what Labour does, civic space does. 1,000+ detained for protesting, which is their right to protest on the basis of constitutional provisions. Finally, on this particular matter, intellectuals have a role in society. From Antonio Gramsci, you talk about organic intellectual that must overcome hegemonies. To people like Edward Said, who's in the representations of the intellectual, you must ensure that the voices that are contrary to potent voices of the hegemonic forces must be heard. But when you begin to diminish those voices, frighten those voices, society becomes increasingly brittle and over-delicate. And that's what is going on today in the country. Democracy must be fully guarded and protected. Don't say because we're taking the military out. It is easier sometimes to battle the military because there's a binary relationship.
The specifics of what you said, because I'm looking at that article, you asked the president to reconstitute his cabinet. Yes. Reconstitute your cabinet and incorporate elements within organized political opposition and civic groups. His cabinet are his ministers, the people that he meets with on a weekly basis. What kind of reconstitution do you think he should do there?
Well, when you set up a cabinet ab initio in the first instance, there are two things you could do. How did he get to power? He got to power because there was a massive national consensus that saw you through power. You can then relax and bring in any manner of person you want. If it's a narrow conspiratorial process that led you to power, you must then pick people within that conspiratorial group. That's why suddenly they found 5 or 6 governors, former governors, as ministers. One left Lalong to go back to the Senate. He was a minister. El-Rufai was to be a minister. Badaru a minister. Bagudu a minister. Umahi a minister. It's unusual that they find people who have governed the subnational level for 8 years, then jump into cabinet portfolios. You can find that it's sort of pacification because of political loyalty and so on, including the FCT minister from the other side. So when you have that, and you have a whole lot of other people of maybe indeterminate orientation, not even who they are, their records may not be very clear. You do that to pacify people that saw you to power. But after a while, he said, this is not working. And really, it's not working now. Let's agree. This is not working in almost every particular. Therefore, I need to retool it, but not just by rejigging it to suit the people who I'm comfortable with. But to do the hard things and take the hard choices or hard decisions. That's what I talked about. Reaching out to the organized opposition and said, we are all patriotic forces in Nigeria. We are all patriots. Come on board or send people on board to help us stabilize this thing and get it work. Civil society too. There are many leading lines of civil society that can play a role.
At the risk of opening up old wounds, when the Buhari administration was in power, and they started empowerment programs, and then they said it was open, you could go online.
They are not empowerment programs, actually.
That's what they said. They said it was an empowerment program. So they said, go online, you can do all of that. I remember very clearly that he was criticized for doing it by his party. They said, give the empowerment to the party, so that when we give it to our people, they will sing your praises. You're giving empowerment to people who would never commend you. So they said this was what made it look like the President Buhari administration wasn't doing anything. It was because they didn't have the right people doing the distribution so that they could sing the praises of the government.
Absolutely. Even if you do the right thing by empowering people through palliatives and then handouts and so on, it means how unserious you are as a government. If this government persists in that same mode, then it's unserious to govern. Because the money you're wasting, the hundreds of billions you're wasting, that are scattering all over the place, and they will not leave any footprints or footmarks. When you give somebody 20, 30 naira in the Nigeria of today, you know what that means to go to the market. So there won't be any sustainability in terms of the person's living condition. So when you do that, it means you're not even serious. So what you need to do first is understand the forces at work in society, because every society is composed of social forces. Those forces are now unleashed. They're unleashed because the hunger is rioting all over the place and poverty and penury diminishing the people. So when they say you got in the council of state to give you vote of confidence, it makes nothing. Because really it's not in their duty at the place to give you vote of confidence. The people will give you that. Now, on the broad scale, if If I go back to the original thesis that I had in my mind, I'm happy this conversation dovetailed into it. The history of struggle in Nigeria is not just a history against military despotism. Even within civilian space, I was saying, under the military, the choices are binary. They are bad guys, we are good guys. Under democracy, in wood, somebody is elected and empowered to be in office. To confront him when he's not doing right is not easy. That's why they can hide under so many subterfuges to cage the people, to tamp down labor, to destroy the civic space, to say, oh, we are elected, we're not like military. So if you simply shrink and say, because this government is elected, let's just allow them to run riot all over society, then those guardrails will be broken. The guardrails protect civic liberties, protect press freedom, protect human rights, protect constitutional governance.
I mean, we're talking right now about the shrinking of the civic space, which is a very...
aggressively shrinking.
Now, for those...
And people must speak out.
For those who are in the security agencies, like the police, and I know part of this conversation is coming up because of the Labour leader, the NLC president, being invited, and those who were detained during the protests.
The last protests, yes.
Well, let's hone in on this particular one, the NLC president being invited on these questions on terrorism financing and whatnot. The police will tell you that, look, we're doing our job.
Okay.
It's not, we're not shrinking the civic space. Okay. If an investigation is going on and the man ran into Neota's house, I would want to know if Neota knows this guy, you know. So it's not as though he's under arrest. I'm just inviting. Let me
tell you why.
The question then will also be, was there actually a man that ran into Neota's?
There's something that's going on, you know, inviting him over, let's make that point. Inviting him over doesn't mean he's under arrest. And in what way is that shrinking the civic space? That's what security will ask you.
Let me tell you how it works. How do democracies fail? It's not because somebody gets a gun, and in the past, and fires shots, and government scatters, and the new order is composed of hunter, your military hunter. Democracy crumbles by what you're describing. You can sit in your office as IG. I'm not saying they've done in this instance and invent a fictitious crime and demonize people. You can criminalize potent forces. NLC have beef with this government. So I'm suspicious of government motive. There's a lot of beef. Even the new minimum wage hasn't even kicked off. Many things, issues are resolved down the line. Suddenly when you hear terrorism, terror financing, you are frightened ab initio, you and I say, oh, give the benefit of the doubt because they may just be doing their job. Right. I'm saying that they could just be criminalized and demonizing potent civic forces and voices out there. When they have people, 1,000+ them, detained for how many weeks now, without trial, without arraigning them in court in a democratic state. You say, oh, no, there could be a lot of other subversive things around them. That's what I'm talking about, shrinking civic spaces, about democracy itself under threat, and how powerful voices, strong intellectual voices, thinkers' voices must be out there to protect this. Let me tell you, when Hitler came to power, he won the election. He was sworn in as a Chancellor of Germany. But over time, people can grow and become something they are not meant to be. We don't have a Hitler in our midst so far. We never had one. But the point is that if we stop protecting democratic governance and protecting civic spaces, politicians do not know how to say stop. Remember the old saying that may be tried. Power corrupts. The absoluteness of it corrupts absolutely. That's why I find that even in dark moments of struggle, look at the case of Nkombola again, during the military, stuck his neck out, became what? A prisoner of conscience in a battle. Look at the column he used to have, Nkombola's column. Look at the kind of things they poured out there at great risk to themselves and their families and their communities. But they didn't sit back to say, oh, let the government behave any way it likes. We can't allow the police to behave any way they like. We can't allow the DSS to behave any way they like. They're under democratic control. In 1999, when we enthroned this democracy, the first plank was to do what? Subject the defense, security, and intelligence forces to democratic control. They don't live in a strange, autonomous world of their own. They cannot come out that space and say, oh, we are doing our work and diminish civic liberties and damage the democracy we struggle to build. Anybody egging them on, whether in government, whether you are in a high place, must put a stop to that.
Prof, I wrote something here when you started this conversation. Indeed, you were right when you said the neoliberal policies. But I wrote something down. I wrote academia versus government versus the people. in the sense that some will say the academia is where the failure of government can be tied to, in the sense that the professors and those who are in the academic who have studied all of these policies and seen how they've impacted societies in the past, present, and towards the future are not speaking or are not meeting with government at certain points to say this is what should be done. And when it comes to the electioneering process, the academia who have been brought in to help, birth these new governments, so to speak, are themselves, or have allowed themselves to be somewhat compromised.
Okay, fine, I get it. In my previous conversation somewhere else, I said that the thinkers or the thought leaders, those who belong to have set up many think tanks and think through societal problems, we are complicit in some of these issues you raised. Not even at the mechanical level, the mechanics of managing the election and being compromised, at the big level of big ideas and big thought. I gave the example of presidential system. Why have professors and thinkers folded their hand to say, oh, it has come to stay? Something that is persistently shown not to be working well, in spite of the grandiose levels of amendments of the Constitution and the way we think it here and there. Is it foundational or ontological in the sense that the identity of this political system, this political order, is not even working? Thinkers need to do a lot in that direction. See what Obasanjo is doing of late. Talking about how do we rethink liberal democracy in Africa? How do we challenge its normative claims and the so-called universal values that propel it? How do we get Afrocentric conditions for African democracy to emerge? So I agree with you that thinkers ought to do more. But again, like Karl Marx, I won't stop talking about him, said, the ideas of the ruling class are the ruling ideas in every epoch. The ruling class, we know who they are in Nigeria. The ruling political clique, we know who is leading them. Those ideas are the ideas that permeate society. So when you see people normally give example of a messenger who is corrupt and a PAM secretary is corrupt, everybody is corrupt in Nigeria. You know my answer? Water becomes muddy from the edge, from the top, not at the middle, at the head. And no fish rot from the middle part of it, the head. So people get their impetuses reflected in the way those who lead them behave.
Some people...
So the moral climate is defined by the ruling class. So the professor who is hurting, majorly look at this scenario in which a family is in destitution, poverty is racking him with all the years of labor. Many are even graduates of Harvard, Yale, and other Ivy League universities, yet they can't make ends meet.
Since you brought up the concept...
them to behave at a higher moral terrain than the rest of society, sometimes it will not even work, even when many are damn good in what they do, and they resist all manners of compulsions to do bad.
Since you brought up the concept of the decay of democratic ethos in Nigeria, I want you to be able to get your thoughts on a broader conversation, which is that this democracy which we're practicing here is borrowed and doesn't reflect our realities as a people. If you go to other parts, but we all keep talking about Rwanda. Everyone wants the beauty and the development of Rwanda. Can you pay the price of living in Rwanda? You're not allowed to protest in Rwanda. There are civil liberties that you cannot enjoy. You cannot put your speakers outside of your church and be blasting music or praying in your mosque without loud music. I think that they have to sacrifice for the sort of life that they live there. Do you think that this modern liberal democracy that we're practicing here is one that reflects us, or do we have a peculiar situation where we should create our own style democracy that reflects our values and who we are?
I've already put it out there and I said, if you want to look at democracy, you look at democracy from two perspectives. The universality of democratic values or norms and the specificities of those norms that are unique to geographies, to groups like Africa, like Nigeria. You do some sort of eclectic, binding. You bring this and bring that and then merge together. I'm not going to sit here and then propose an Afrocentric democracy that is shorn of any universal claims. Then am I going to allow, as we have allowed, the penetration of Nigerian political space by comprehensive foreign invasion, democratic invasion. The history of liberal democracy in Africa for 30 years, that long march is a wasted march across board. So you can have all the so-called freedoms you are describing here, yes, but then how about liberties? It's been a contestation even in the bipolar world of communism and capitalism in the 70s and 80s, when they say, socialists will tell you, you need to live in a home, no matter how small it is. You need to have a job. You need to go to school free of charge. You need to be protected from poverty. Capitalism will tell us, he's telling us today, you are free. Go and do anything you like to do, but there's no money. Go to Ibadan, you're free to go to Ibadan, but you don't have a penny to even feed yourself and your family. Go and belong to a political party, but the form to become a governor is 100 million. And if you don't have it, you won't become a governor. So those normative claims of liberal democracy are sham because the actual ideological apparatus is camouflaged as norms. That means it is arranged to suit the rich against the poor. So they claim to give you freedom, but you don't have the freedom because the material prerequisites for freedom are denied you comprehensively. Look at the legal state. The jurisprudence is not abnormal as people think, that they have a lot of wives and girlfriends and the sons and daughters of the powerful and the rich in the court, in the bench. No, it is designed. That lady justice has no blindfold. It is clear-sighted. That's why it takes 12 years to even try a governor, but 1 week to sentence a guy in Day who stole a fowl to prison. Because the court is arranged to reflect the economics of power in a state, the so-called political economy of power. So when you talk about a liberal democracy or what is happening in Rwanda or happening in China, I don't know. I've not been to Rwanda. I don't know whether they're happy. I don't know whether they're sad. But if Rwanda is doing well as a state in terms of its economy, social services, public works, and so on, and the people are not being tortured and imprisoned, the way people are even being tortured and imprisoned here too. I don't know what years we're benefiting. You have a parliament that has gone crazy, absolutely. Our debate, which we have not even come to, is how many millions they earn a year, a month? Oh, it's 20 million. No, it is 10. Oh, 20 million is not even enough. Well, the parliament should be reconstituted as one, a unicameral, and made a part-time job. And when this highest salary should be that of a public school principal, I don't see the hell of work they do. Because if they do it, and they do it well, the living standard of people of this country will be improved dramatically over the past course of 24, 25 years.
So, Prof, we need to go real quick. So in winding down, some clients have done a mix of all of this, different, a mix of the systems out there, whether welfarism or socialism or capitalism, as the case may be. What would you say should be the way forward for Nigeria?
In summation, for the moment that grips us now, the president has to do course correction, embrace the political state and work with that state, enhance relationship with civic society, the civic order, or civic infrastructure of governance. Do that. And then retool economic agenda to reflect both their neoliberal instincts and then populist concerns and agitations, balance them. The specificities of this balancing is something for him and his team to work and not for me. 4, the protection of democracy, civil liberties, and press freedom by ensuring that the guardrails that make these protections work are maintained and not diminished. Finally, the role of public intellectuals, like I said earlier, is to do what? Be the beacon of light, be the strength of society, speak powerfully to people in power, tell them the basic truth, that across generations, across the world, the great scholars and great thinkers of all times have tried to do what we're doing today. As much as possible, try to maintain the space in which you must have authoritative voice, and you must have that voice to really permeate the corridors of power. That power not only is it transient, but democracy is something which you must guard jealously. And that the police and other security apparatus should not diminish or demonize, people who are actually out there to make a living and enjoy their life in the democratic state. If you get all these things together, I suspect and I believe strongly too, Nigeria will wobble out from where we are, move on a steady pace to a better social and political order, and finally can crest that mountaintop of national illumination to say we have arrived because we have ceased to belong in a society where a foreign democratic invasion has taken control of our land. We're able to push back on the democratic state as constituted and rebuild the democratic order with some injection from internal conditions of African Nigeria.
Thank you so much. This is where we have to hang the conversation for today. Professor Udenta. Udenta is the founding national secretary at the Alliance for Democracy, AD, and a distinguished fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Also was director with the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution and all of that. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Sunrise Daily will take a moment, and when we come back, it will be the business segment on Sunrise Daily. Just stay with us.